Greetings and salutations, travelers of the internet. Welcome to the Lit Round Table. I'm Anna.
And I'm Joseph, and we'll be your wise or not so wise mentors for today's audio adventure into all things storytelling. And today, in episode 15 of season 2, we're going to talk about visual novels, manga, comic books. Do they count as reading?
Do they count as reading?
But first, before you answer that question...
I was going to ask another question.
Well, what are you going to ask? What were you going to say?
I was just going to say... I don't even remember now. It's gone. It's totally gone. Okay, whatever.
The world will never know. Oops.
We are just a couple of silly goofballs in a silly, goofy mood.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so the usual stuff. First, real quick shout out to the Patreon. If you wanna help decide on the next book that we read for the read along, go subscribe to our Patreon, and go check that out. Also, for the read along, we're doing Hall of Smoke right now, which you can totally still catch up to where we're at. We're not too far along.
Nope.
We're still in the beginning, like 4th, right?
Yeah, we're not even to chapter 20 yet, so. Which I know sounds like doable. Deep in, but it's not.
It's not that deep. So you can totally catch up if you haven't started already. But yeah, go check it out. But now, the usual stuff. What have you been up to? What you watching? What you reading?
Excellent questions. What am I watching and what am I reading?
I know a couple.
So I've been reading and just finished The Long Winter. We actually had our last book club on that today.
Oh, cool.
Also reading Hall of Smoke, obviously. The Secrets of Storytelling is the workbook for creative writing for kids. Mm-hmm. I have ordered a bunch of Yona of the Dawn manga because they came in stock and they've been out of stock for forever, so they're on their way to my house.
Nice.
Not that I needed to spend money on manga, but since they go out of stock really quickly, I didn't want to waste any time. For watching, also watching Yona of the Dawn, which has been excellent.
Mm-hmm. It has been fun.
Critical Role Campaign 3. Wowza.
It's picked up. It's picking up now.
It sure is.
It was a bit of a slower start compared to Campaign 2, but we are in the thick of it now.
I think it's just a different start. I don't know if I would call it slow. Maybe.
Just slower.
Just slower.
Slower.
Speaking of Campaign 2, I am on episode 66. Beneath Bazonics and Bazonics. I don't know how to say that word. Too many consonants that I don't use very often.
Hey, you're like almost halfway.
I am. Yeah, we're just getting into some like really interesting Yasha stuff. Ashley Johnson has been back for like the last handful of episodes, and that has been fantastic. Mm-hmm. Super jazzed about that. So, that's really what has been consuming my time.
Yeah.
It
does that.
It does. Although I may need to take a break because I'm having a hard time doing Campaign 2 and Campaign 3 at the same time because I forget which characters I'm with.
Yeah, I can see where that would be a thing.
And then I just find myself like missing certain characters. Be like, oh, I really miss Fern. Or when I'm watching Campaign 3, I'll be like, I wish Jester was here.
Yeah. Yeah. Those chaotic characters.
I do love them. Who would have thought?
Yep.
I'm not playing anything. I am making cupcakes this week. So right before we recorded, I was whipping up some frosting. So
nice.
That's been a thing. And this is really goofy. And dear listener, you can't see this, but I use a notebook, especially when we do our read-along episodes. that I keep notes in, and I went through and cleaned out that notebook because it's a what do they call these? Where you can just take the papers out.
A spiral notebook?
No, it's not a spiral notebook. It's a disc notebook because the discs can come off.
Oh, weird. Okay.
And you can like refill it with paper. Anyway,
okay.
It's a disc notebook, and I took out all of my papers from like the Lies of Locke Lamora.
Oh, wow.
The Dragonlance book that we read, Dragon's Bottom Twilight, The Blade itself, Light of the Midnight Stars, all of those pages. And now my notebook is like
half a centimeter.
Really, really skinny.
Yeah.
And I was going to just recycle that paper, and then I was like, oh, but what if I ever want to look back at those notes? And I need you to tell me, Joseph, that I am never going to look back at those notes.
You will never look back at those notes.
Okay to throw them away.
You should recycle them.
I am going to recycle them.
Because it's good for the planet.
Okay. I don't need
to
hoard them. Okay.
Yes. Because that's something that people in our family have a hard time doing, is throwing things away.
I know, but you know what the instinct was? It's because it also was like notes from like my Chronicles of Narnia book clubs that I did with the kids. Where I was like, I could reference back to this or like turn these into classes, but I have all of that stuff typed up. If it exists in digital, I do not need it in paper.
Yeah, for sure.
But I just need permission to get rid of it. And you've given that to me. And so once we're done, I'm going to go take my notebook thick stack of paper and put it in my recycling bag.
There you go.
But you know what I found while I was doing that? Was a note on something that I wanted to talk about on the podcast that I never did talk about on the podcast. And it fits in well with today's topic, so it may come up. Or I may save it. We'll see. But
cool.
Anyway, that's my update on me.
Sweet.
Is that okay?
Awesome.
I went off book a little bit.
You're fine. You're fine. My turn. So for me, what I've been watching is, Yona of the Dawn. Mm-hmm. We talked about that. That's our current anime night thing that we're watching, and that's been super fun. I've also, Hope and I did watch like the first couple episodes of Fruits Basket, which is adorable.
I was recently told that I needed to watch that.
You would enjoy it. You would definitely enjoy it.
Yeah.
I also have watched.
Is Fruits Basket slice of life or like what?
Yeah. Okay. It's like a slice of life with fantasy elements.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we'll go with that. And I've also watched a couple episodes of Overlord because I've seen that all over the place. It's kind of like, did I tell you about Sword Art Online? Mm-hmm. Have you heard about that one at all?
I've heard of it. I haven't seen it.
So the whole premise of that that show is the characters get trapped in a video game, and if they die in the video game, they die in real life. Yeah. In this one, this guy is in a video game, one of those big MMORPG video games where like they have a guild and everything, but the game is shutting down. They're shutting the servers down, and he sticks around until the end for the server shutdown. But when they shut down, he like gets trapped in the game. All the NPCs come to life, and he can't log out, and he's stuck in the game.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
Okay.
But also like they got sent to a different world or something. Yeah, it's weird. Yeah, I'll give it a couple more episodes. I will say the fan service in this one is a little more extreme, more so than I was expecting it to be. So it's like it's moments that are weird, but we'll see. Sometimes those things get better. But anyway, watch a couple episodes of that. Critical Role, obviously, Campaign 3. Last 2 episodes were total hits. Love it.
Did you watch the Four-Sided Dive from yesterday.
No.
You should.
Ooh.
Taliesin
Okay, I need
is
to
on
watch
it.
that.
Taliesin,
good. My
Ashley,
favorite.
and Matt, and Erica.
Love it.
It was really good.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Yeah.
I will have to do that for sure. That'll be my thing that I watch tonight. So, been watching that. I feel like that's about it for watching. I mean, there's some YouTube things that I've been getting more into again. But like specific creators on YouTube. But yeah.
Yeah. I never mentioned like that I pretty religiously watch Good Mythical Morning.
Yeah. So yeah,
I do.
I don't. Yeah, I don't feel the need to mention that kind of thing.
Well,
like Critical Role's on YouTube, but it's like a
Storytelling.
storytelling. Like yeah. Anyway, so for reading, I'm still trucking along through Oathbringer. I'm on chapter like 30 something, 35 or 6. Yeah.
Nice.
That's been really awesome. Loving it so far.
Do you primarily listen to that on your commute?
Yeah.
Or are you reading it?
And like during my lunch break, I'll have it going.
Nice.
Sometimes though, this is one of those books where sometimes you finish your commute and you're like, I have to finish this chapter, and then you'll go up to your apartment and dig the book out and finish the chapter.
Nice.
So anyway, Oathbringer. Also Hall of Smoke. Yeah, that's been most of the reading. For playing, still Elden Ring, Lego Star Wars. We made it. We're in The Force Awakens now in Lego Star Wars. So we're making good progress on that. Yeah, that's kind of what I've been up to.
Nice. Did you guys have game night since we recorded last?
No. Not like a board game night, no.
Okay.
No.
Speaking of board games, Critical Role came out with an Ukatoa board game.
Yeah, I have it. I've played it.
Is it good?
It's fun, yeah. It's awkward. Like I think it's one of those ones where you have to have like an awkward number of players. I think it's like you have to have 3.
Oh. That makes sense because there are 3. Anyway.
But it is fun. And it's cool. A cool like Ukatoa mini.
Okay.
That you could paint, if you wanted to, because it's just gray. But yeah, it's cool. It's very cool. I also have the Mighty 9 Munchkins. I've never played Munchkins.
We should do that. We should do that.
That'd be fun.
That would be fun. Okay.
Um,
Sorry, side note.
Yeah.
But I keep seeing the ad for it, and I was like, I should ask Joseph about that. Because now I know what Ukatoa is.
Yes, you do.
So.
Ukatoa.
Yes. Oh, there's an Ukatoa song. I don't know. Here's what happened. I will sometimes fall asleep watching Critical Role, and it will autoplay to some random episode. I don't even know what. Sometimes it's one I've seen before. Sometimes it's one in a campaign I'm not watching. But at one point, I woke up and that Ukatoa song was playing, and that is a really intense thing to wake up to.
That is, yeah.
And it was kind of scary. And I was like,
did you see a giant
glowing
glowing yellow eyeball? Did you puke seawater?
I didn't puke seawater. But no, but like the visual they had going for it, I was like, I need to go to bed.
Yeah. Before I have like a creepy sea dragon sleep paralysis demon.
Yeah.
Yeah. Although I should also mention that we have been getting ready to do a D&D thing with Sam, Sarah, and one of their base friends. So at some point, I'll be able to talk about that.
Nice.
But that hasn't happened yet.
Nice.
So, yeah. But that's pretty much it for... That's it for me.
Cool.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Yeah. So, we can talk about comic books and manga. So, first, just give me your gut reaction. Do you think comics count as reading?
Yes.
Okay.
Hard yes.
Okay.
Do you think comics count as reading?
No. I'm kidding. I'm
I
totally
was like, oh gosh, we're gonna have our first fight on the pod.
No. You made it sound like we've never had a fight before. No, the first
On the pod.
first podcast fight.
Yes.
Yeah. We're gonna have our first fight ever on the podcast. Wow.
No.
No.
First
But-
recorded fight.
Yeah. No. Yeah. No. Well, because the thing is, it's an easy argument to win, right? Because like you're literally reading words when you read a comic book. But like I guess that's like the technicality of it, right? But I guess like the meaning behind the question is, some people might think that there's like there's some kind of stigma where it doesn't count as actually reading. I feel like that's just been a thing with things that are more visual and require less of like your own imagination.
Right.
Kind of like, your mom telling you TV is going to fry your brain. It's like, oh, like I just picture some kid back in like the 50s or the 60s with like a Superman comic book, and his mom's like, go read Huckleberry Finn. Why are you the comic books? You're gonna melt your brain. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like that kind of mentality.
Well, in defense of the moms who said that TV will fry your brain, blue light really isn't good for your eyes.
Yeah, you're right.
So they weren't like totally wrong, but it's not like it's not the stories that are being told in TV that is frying your brain. It's that
Per se.
well, I mean that's true of anything.
Yeah.
It's the input mechanism in your eyeballs that is potentially damaging in excess.
Mm-hmm. That is something, as far as going back to like the whole visual novel thing, that's something that I feel like gets kind of ingrained early on, that comic books don't count, or like you have to read more of them to like match the level of like reading a book. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah, I know what you mean. There's a stigma around it, which I guess kind of makes sense, because when you start reading as a kid, you start with picture books, which are not the same thing as comic books. Yeah. Because the content is generally not as mature in a picture book as it is in a comic book. Of course, there are exceptions. Because there are some picture books that aren't actually children's books at all, which is a whole other thing. But but the notion that graphic novels are somehow an inferior mechanism of telling a story, I find to be small-minded, if I can be so bold.
I would go so far as to say slightly ignorant.
Yes.
And judgy.
And I'm saying that as someone who didn't understand like graphic novels or manga for a long time.
You're kind of a new convert, you know.
Yeah. And it's not that I didn't, I think for a long time it was out of ignorance, which we've said, but I mean, but in a way that I like didn't know where to start and didn't understand like I don't know. I just couldn't wrap my head around with manga the idea of reading it backwards. Like that was really challenging. But once you've read like 3 volumes, then you start reading memes on the internet backwards, and you're like, why doesn't this make sense? Oh yeah, I have to read it the Western way, from left to right.
Yep.
Which is just funny.
That's really funny. Yeah.
But and I don't think we had access to graphic novels when we were kids as easily as we do now.
I mean, there were the usual suspects like Walden Books in the mall,
Right.
had a spinny comic book thing that I remember perusing all the time whenever we'd go there, mostly for the Star Wars comics.
Sure.
I loved, like, Star Wars comics were like one of my favorite things to look at.
Right. And that's,
and also,
I guess that was my exposure too.
Yeah. And I remember specifically, there was these, I still remember because I still have the figures and the comic book. There was a comic book, well, they did a series of things where, like, you could buy the comic book with an action figure of a character from the comic book, and it came in like a set. And I remember that really distinctly because there was one comic that I really, really liked, and I saw that they did that, and I remember being super excited about buying that. And that's something that I would also say that it's, if you're going to try to dismiss comic books and manga and all kind of graphic novel, visual novel people, I mean, it's also rude to the artist.
Right.
You know,
Absolutely.
Because it's someone who is a skilled artist, who is telling a story with their art that is so much more involved and time consuming and takes so much more effort than just like the Sunday comics in the paper, which I feel like is probably what a lot of people just thought comic books were. It's like just a thing of just like dumb comics like Garfield. It's like, no, it's a little, and I'm not sorry Garfield. I'm not like bashing Garfield right now, but
you're saying people think that graphic novels are equivalent to the Sunday funnies, which are an easy joke most of the time.
Right.
But we're talking about an entire story that's being told through panels.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's, like I said, much more involved. Takes a lot more planning. You have to like draw and redraw these characters however many times. So like just totally brushing it off is, you're not only like kind of insulting like the intelligence of the people that like that kind of storytelling by thinking that like their preferred method of ingesting story is inferior to yours, but also you are doing a huge disservice to the artist and the storyteller behind it, who put a ton of blood, sweat, and tears into those pieces of art, and they love them, and it's like their story, and they wanted to share it with people. You're just kind of discounting that, which is not nice of you to do. No. And I'm also like really like demonizing people right now. Like, I don't actually know anyone in real life who is like heavily anti-graphic novel that I know of. I mean, if I like poked and prodded and asked, I'd probably find a couple.
Yeah, I had a conversation recently, and this was more about anime, but it's tied to this, so I want to bring it up here. They have a young person in their life, I'm talking like an 8-year-old, who's watching Naruto, which I need to watch. So that I can relate to this kid. But I did recommend My Hero Academia to them as like a secondary series, and I think that would be an appropriate transition. And I asked someone who's seen both, and they said that Naruto was actually maybe a little more mature than My Hero, so it should be a fine recommendation. But in this conversation that this person was talking about the young person in their life, it was their grandchild. And they were trying to explain the anime to someone who has no clue. And I just happened to be there. And I am by no means an anime expert, but I am someone who enjoys it, versus this person who doesn't really enjoy it, trying to explain it to someone who doesn't know anything about it. It's a very interesting dynamic. And they went on to say, like, in general, it was a pretty positive explanation until they went on to say that it's like for people that don't have a very long attention span and they need quick gratification. It's very flashy and blah, blah, blah. And I was sitting there.
Have you seen a Marvel movie? Did you go see the new Spider-Man?
I mean, exactly. But so I was like, I kind of like made this face where I like scrunched up my eyebrows and like pushed my lips together. And their significant other was also in the room and looked at me and was like, would you like to chime in on that? And I go, I don't think that's entirely fair to say that, because you're talking about a show that is shonen. And he goes, that's not what it's called. I go, I know. I'm saying that's the genre. You're talking about a show that is in the shonen genre, which is designed for young men and boys. Mm-hmm. And it's about superheroes. So, like, yes, that's going to be flashy, but there are lots of genres of anime and manga that are not like that. Like, Yona is not especially flashy. It's telling a very thought-provoking story with occasional fighting, but most of the time it's a story about self-discovery, right? And learning who you are and how you can be valuable in the world. And that's a really valuable story for anyone, really.
Yeah.
Like, the idea that only kids can enjoy cartoons is also kind of infuriating, but
Right.
It just makes me think of the C.S. Lewis quote where he goes, I hope someday you'll be old enough to enjoy fairy tales again. Like, that's a paraphrase. Yeah. But, like, we go through phases in our life where we think that fairy tales are for children. And then we come around and are like, well, actually, there's a lot to be enjoyed as an adult in that story, too. So, and I think the same is true with comic books and graphic novels and manga. But yeah, that conversation kind of prompted me to be like, hey, do we have a topic for this week? Can we talk about comic books and graphic novels? Yeah. Because I was so unprepared for that conversation. But anyway.
That's really interesting. That's like it. Like if you wanna critique just, I feel like if you wanted to critique just media for that age range and demographic, okay, you can critique media that is prepared for that age range and demographic, but I feel like it's unfair to put that on the kids and not on like the media companies.
Well, and
also,
just like
modern media, just kind of like that's just what gets thrown at them, you know?
Yeah. Well, and also, like, that's a genre, so it has tropes just like anything else. Yeah. And if it's a show like Naruto or My Hero Academia or even Demon Slayer, like, the fighting part of it is pretty involved and pretty important to the storytelling. And it's flashy, but it's also really cool. So, like, if you're watching it, it looks really cool.
And the animators, like, put in so much work into those scenes, like because let's be real, fight scenes in manga are kind of hard to track.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, when you're reading it in the paper, you're like, I see an arm and I see hair, but I don't really know what's happening.
Having a hard time tracking what's going on. What happened between these panels? I don't know. Something cool.
Right.
But then when you actually get to watch the animation, like the anime adaptation for a manga, you get to actually see those fight scenes happen, and that's really cool. And that's the same with like American comics too, like Superman, Justice League, Spider-Man. Like you see these fights in the comic books, and you can finally see them realized either live action or in like a cartoon, and that's just really cool. Right. That's just something that's something that's always been around. So it's like if he was bashing his grandkid for having a short attention span because he watches Spider-Man cartoons. It's like, well,
yeah, and
they're a little kid. Why can't they like Spider-Man? Why is that?
I don't think he was intentionally like trying to belittle his grandkid. Right. But that is how it came out.
Yeah.
And I think there's something to be said for, this kid started by watching Naruto, but now they're checking out and reading the manga from the library. Like, can you really say something that promoted reading, even if it is of a lesser, heavy sarcasm version of storytelling? Like, they're still picking up a book. They're still excited about reading.
Yeah.
Like, that's not insignificant.
It's still storytelling. They're still going to learn lessons. They're still going to, like, attach themselves to characters. They're still gonna like learn lessons along with the characters while they're
Yeah.
reading. And the main difference between like a manga or a comic and a traditional novel is that you just don't have to do as much imagining on like what the characters look like.
Right.
Instead of like for a manga, you'll get some of the box text where there's like some narration happening, but for the most part, you're reading the dialogue and you're looking at the action. You're not. I mean, really, it's kind of like the ultimate expression of show don't tell.
True. It's funny because as you were saying that, I was just thinking, as someone who is setting, I don't even know what to call myself, setting blind, like when I'm reading.
Setting challenged. Yeah.
I'm not that way when I read manga because you can see it. So I don't have to like try and fill in the blanks of what the words are telling me. It's right there. I know exactly what the setting of My Hero Academia looks like. I don't have to think too hard about it. But if you ask me to think about like what does the Pevensies house look like? I'll have to think I'm gonna have to think a little bit harder about that.
Yeah.
Not too hard, because I also have the movies to fall back on, but like you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like if there isn't
sure.
a visual component with it somewhere, I have to think a lot harder about what is that actually supposed to look like. So, which
For sure.
is I don't know. I could probably get diagnosed with something for that, but I don't know what it would be. So.
Yeah. Yeah. So I just think that kind of writing off graphic novels is definitely a disservice to people that enjoy them and the people that create them, for all the reasons we've listed. As far as like, sorry, what were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say that before, I don't know where you're going, so I just want to talk about like vocabulary and like lexicon. So when I worked at the elementary school and I was in the library, we talked a lot about kids reading within their lexicon, which I could go on a rant about anyway because and we would often have kids that wanted to check out the graphic novels, like the Dork Diaries or Captain Underpants. Like those also are graphic novels.
Yep. Oh yeah, I totally forgot that Captain Underpants was 100% a graphic novel.
Yeah, or like Diary of a Wimpy Kid. Like those are all really popular books, but they typically had a lexile that was much higher than the kids that wanted to check them out's lexicon. So like your lexicon is your built-in like vocabulary. It's they test that, I don't know, whatever. And the lexile of a book is like what the average like challenging vocabulary looks like in the book. And the graphic novels were a lot of times much higher than the other books in the library. And they are that way because when you're reading a graphic novel, you can have higher vocabulary words because you have other context clues to help the reader understand what they mean. So there's a lot of value in having visual cues to learning new words. It's just like there's a lot of, I don't know how common it is anymore just because the Sunday paper isn't as common anymore as it used to be. But like our great-grandpa learned how to speak English after he immigrated to the U.S. by reading the Sunday comics. Because you could see the dialogue and the person. And like that combination made it much easier to digest what was being said. So like there's a vocabulary component to graphic novels that's really valuable. And I would get so irritated when certain people would not want the kids to check out graphic novels because they weren't real books. Like, yes, they are. They are real books.
I guess I didn't think about how your background working in an elementary school would have also, like, you would have run into this much more often than me.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
that's interesting.
There are a lot of other gripes you can come up with for the Diary of a Wimpy Kid and the Captain Underpants books. Like, and I'm not saying that they're not good books. I'm just saying, if you're going to complain about them, let's complain about the principal running around in his underwear. Like, that as a concept is more troublesome than the fact that it's a graphic novel.
Like, if you don't want all your students running around making dumb, like, poop jokes,
right.
like just toilet humor, then I understand not wanting them to check out Captain Underpants. Like, I get it.
Yeah. Yeah. But it being a graphic novel is not a valid critique, in my opinion.
Yep.
So, anyway.
Yeah. No, I agree. So I do want to reference one thing. I thought of this right before we started recording, and I was like, oh my gosh, I have a story we can talk about. Do you remember back in the day when we were young, and mom and dad were trying to incentivize us reading the Bible?
I know exactly where you're going with this.
So because if you grew up in a any kind of religious household, not even necessarily Christianity, I'm sure that's a theme where as a kid your parents were trying real hard to get you to like ingest whatever the scriptures are in that religion that you're brought up in. So basically, I don't even remember if there was like some kind of reward system. There may have been. I don't remember it at this point. But I vividly remember the imbalance between like either it was like a time thing. You either read this amount of time from like the Bible, like the book, or you can read twice as long if it's the graphic Bible, which we had, which was like a comic version of the Bible with like artwork. It was like a comic book, like an actual comic, not like cheesy like little kid picture book like Noah's Ark. I mean,
no,
like
not
there's
at all.
like whoa, there's some like it's the graphic Bible. I mean, there's some graphic stuff in there.
Specifically the Old Testament with like Absalom.
Yeah.
Do you remember that? Oh, it was real dark.
I remember seeing the
he hangs
boils
himself.
on the. I remember seeing the boils on the Egyptians.
I just remember there's like a very trigger warning, I guess. I very vividly remember the illustration of Absalom from when he ran into the tree and hung himself.
Yeah, no, that was pretty messed up.
And I think that's who it was. I'm pretty sure it was Absalom. Anyway.
No, it was. Because he had cool hair.
He did. He had really cool hair. He was a jerk. Well, as I recall. But
anyway, so
of all the things to take away from that was probably not the one mom and dad were hoping for.
Yeah. But it's just interesting. It was interesting looking back with this topic that we're talking about today, how we had to read twice as much from the graphic one if we wanted the full credit, for the reading.
Well, I think I don't think it was because it wasn't valuable. I think that they realized that it was easier to read the graphic novel versus reading the actual Bible.
I mean, of course.
So I think that's where the motivation came from. It wasn't them saying the graphic novel isn't valuable. It was just them recognizing that, wow, it's much easier to read. Yeah. But, no, you could get through like 2 books of the Bible in an hour. The graphic novel in like 2 pages. Bible.
Because the graphic novel or the graphic Bible is also very abridged.
Yes.
Like all of the letters from Paul at the end, it's just like pictures of people reading a letter, and it's not because how do you make letters from Paul into a graphic novel? You don't really. You skip over that and go straight to Revelation. That's when the good stuff is.
Right.
Yes.
I mean, they basically could have been like, this is Genesis, Exodus, Judges, no Psalms, no Proverbs.
Right.
Some of the prophets and the Gospels. In Revelation.
Kings, Chronicles, whatever. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Like they'll hit like all the big story beats, but you can't fit like all of those like Jewish scriptures into there's a lot. But no, I thought of that when we were talking
That's
about
funny.
this topic.
I hadn't thought of that in a long time. I really actually enjoyed that graphic Bible. I think the art in it is actually pretty
The art is cool. Yeah.
pretty cool. So I wanted to, because I don't know where that is, if you got that or if it's still at mom and dad's, I don't know. But I wanted my own copy, but I couldn't find the exact one, so I have a different Action Bible. It's not the same.
Oh, okay.
But
If I ever dig it out and hunt it down, I'll give it to you.
okay, thanks.
Yeah.
It's just one of those
it might
weird
be in
things.
a box somewhere, but yeah,
Just
for
one
sure.
of those things.
For sure.
That's really funny. Yeah.
Yeah, I just thought that was an interesting little story. And mom and dad, if you're listening to this, yes, I remember that.
We also had cassettes. Which
Oh wait, what? Really? We did?
Yes, we did. We had cassettes. We had the Bible on cassette. Which that was
I guess
also
so.
an
I
never
never did that.
I never
Yeah,
did
I never
either.
did that.
Because the graphic novel was an option.
Yeah. Duh. Clearly, that's the correct choice.
Obviously. We could have a whole separate conversation probably about audiobooks and whether or not they count as reading, because that's another hot topic for some people.
Yeah. So I would say the people who argue for it not being reading, they can get you on the technicality.
Right. Your eyeballs are not
But-
technically reading the paper.
like with the comics, you're literally reading words, so like you can't say that comics aren't reading. But technically with the audiobooks, but it's like, come on now, you're still ingesting the same story.
That's so, and it's so ableist. Because what about people who cannot read?
What about blind people and all they have are audiobooks? You're just going to invalidate their entire experiences with storytelling and ingesting the stories. Like, get out of here, come on.
Like, that is so not cool.
Yeah, come on.
Goodbye.
So basically, the moral of this podcast is that some people like to be gatekeepers and they like to feel superior, and they're wrong.
We are clearly the better gatekeepers.
Yes.
Very tongue-in-cheek.
So, I mean, that is definitely... I feel like that's kind of what these discussions boil down to, is people like to... And just like what you were talking about before, about that granddad talking about his kid watching Naruto, I bet... I mean, some people just like to complain about the younger generation. You know, that's just a thing that older people do.
Sure.
So, I mean, it was just a low jab at like young people. You know, he wasn't like maliciously bullying his son or grandson. You know, it was just one of those comments that older people make, like, oh, kids these days don't know how to sit down and just enjoy things without explosions and stuff. Like, you know.
I mean, this is the same person who really enjoys The Hobbit and speculative fiction. So I think that they just haven't made the correlation, like that it's all part of the same family and we can all just get along.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah. So the
maybe...
note.
Sorry, go ahead.
Were you gonna piggyback on what I had just said, or were you gonna wrap it up?
I was gonna say that. Well, maybe for the next one we can talk about audiobooks.
Yeah. No, I think that could be its own conversation, or maybe that could be a Patreon exclusive.
Yeah, there you go.
We'll see.
This reminded me. I'm sorry. Just interesting. I'm gonna let you finish your thought in a second. I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
Sarah. Hi Sarah, if you're listening. My brother-in-law Sam's girlfriend, Sarah, also like reads the books that we've read for the read-alongs and stuff, and is on the Blade itself. And she said that the audiobook, which I never listened to for the Blade itself, for the audiobook, you did? Oh, I didn't know this then.
I think I did.
Then you already know it. The voice actor for Galacto. When Galacta is speaking out loud verbally, he's got a lisp because he's missing his teeth, you know?
Yes.
But for his internal dialogue, he sounds normal, which I just thought was a really interesting, totally makes sense, but I just never would have thought of it, you know? She said that, and I was blown away. I was like, "Oh, that's cool." Now, it made me want to like listen to the audiobook and burn an Audible credit to get the audiobook for a book I've already read.
Yeah.
But
I'm checking my Audible now to see if I have that. Oh, I don't have my password.
oh no. Well, either way, you'll have to check it out and let me know.
I don't know. I don't know what my Amazon password is right now.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that I listened to that. And also read it. I know I did. And yes, he does have a lisp when he talks.
Well, I just thought that was cool.
I can't believe I never pointed that out.
Yeah.
So the thing I was going to say 10 minutes ago. No.
Right. Also, this means that, Sam, you need to step up your game and actually read the books.
I love how I said another thing I was going to say, and then you interrupted me again.
That was on purpose. That was total. That was a bit. That was for a bit.
Okay.
And next week we're gonna talk about.
My audio is like so spiked right now because so sorry, Joseph, editing this. You're gonna make me start throwing my pens.
Do you even remember what you're gonna say?
Yes.
Okay, good. What is it?
I am afraid to speak. No, I was just going to say that the note that I found from my notebook that I referenced at the beginning of the podcast
right.
was about how I had been listening to an episode of The Tripod, which I don't feel bad calling them out by name because they're huge creators and whatever.
Yeah.
We're not going to hurt them. Not that I want to hurt them, but anyway, there was an episode of their podcast. I can't even tell you what episode it was because I wrote this down probably last year sometime because I haven't listened to The Tripod in a long time. Busy with Critical Role.
Yeah.
But one of them was talking about how they didn't count reading like romance or sci-fi as reading because it wasn't edifying. And it made me really mad that I wrote like a whole big paragraph. And I was going to like attack them on Twitter. I didn't because I'm not actually that person. But I was so frustrated listening to that episode because I was like, wow, you're an internet creator. Why are you smacking down on romance writers right now? Why are you doing that? You are not highbrow entertainment. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, I could
Have
see...
you seen your YouTube videos? Like, the Try Guys? Like, the time where you tried to eat 50 dumplings? Like, come on.
Right. Like, I enjoyed that video. And I obviously enjoy their podcast. Like, there's a time and a place for all of it, right? So I was like, why are you being such a jerk about people liking the content that they like? Let people like their stuff, man. Leave them alone. And it's kind of the same thing with comic books and with graphic novels. Like, leave people alone. Let them like what they like. And stop being a judgy McJudgerson. Like, nobody needs that.
It's just like I said, people like to be gatekeepers and they like to feel superior and they like to put other people down for things they like if they think that it's not as cool.
Yeah.
So.
And I don't want to like obviously they've had careers that started from, not lowly places and they are where they are now. Like they've worked really hard to get to where they are. But also like
doesn't mean they can't have trash opinions sometimes.
Right. And quit yucking people's yum. You're dependent on people enjoying your content. So
yeah.
Leave other content creators alone. And that includes authors. Even of serialized romance novels. Leave them alone.
Hey, man.
They're making bank. Good for them.
They're making their money.
Well, they may not be making bank. They should be making bank. But anyway.
Yep.
Also, did you know that like the publishing industry this is a total tangent.
Okay.
The publishing industry is like literally on trial right now because of the random penguin house acquisition of Schuster and Schuster or something like that. We could have a whole podcast on that, but it would mean some real heavy research, probably on my part.
So, I'll let you handle that one.
But it's a big deal because the Department of Justice is suing PRH. Penguin Random. How did that, anyway, because Penguin used to be its own house and then Random House purchased them, or there was a merger, and now they're trying to acquire another house, and it's...
Is it like monopoly rules? Is that what's happening?
Yes.
Okay.
That's what's being disputed.
Well, how come they can get sued by the Department of Justice, but not Amazon?
That is one of their counter-arguments, which I think is also valid.
And Disney.
I don't know. I think it's fascinating and also terrifying as a potential published author someday, hopefully.
Right.
But,
yeah.
Anyway.
Well, yeah. Anyway, I guess. Yeah. Well, that's pretty much all I got as far as like back to like the subject at hand with like the graphic novel stuff. But yeah, totally counts as reading.
Totally, 110%.
And it takes up more space on your bookshelves for like less story per square inch of bookshelf space. So like.
That could be a pro or a con, honestly. As someone who is having some bookshelf space issues, my manga has gotten a little out of control.
It takes up a lot of space.
It does. It really does.
Yeah, pretty good.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Well, I guess next week we'll be talking about Hollow Smoke some more. I'm really excited about that.
Yes, me too.
That book's going interesting places.
Oh, it's so good.
So, that's very good. So I guess come see us then. Don't forget to read and catch up if you haven't. And I guess until next time, go read a comic book or a graphic novel or something because it counts as reading.
Do it. I support this message.
Yes.
And we'll talk at you next time.
Later.
Bye.